Hello, and thank you for joining us for Central Georgia Focus. I'm your host, Liz Fabian, and today we will bring you this month's edition of Ask Mayor Miller. Every month we get together with Mayor Lester Miller of Macon-Bibb County and ask him questions from the public and from journalists from the Center for Collaborative Journalism. Hello, Mr. Mayor. I hope this day finds you well.
So far, so good.
Good. Well, since we met last month, your administration and the county commissioners unanimously approved a $700,000 contract over 10 years to purchase, install, and maintain a multi-sensor dome sensor camera system that will be set up downtown, Carolyn Creighton Park, and the Riverwalk. Now, there was a bit of debate as to whether this would be a deterrent if it's not monitored 24/7. Can you explain what this will be and how you will use that tool?
Sure, I think number one, it's an excellent tool for public safety. It's something the sheriff certainly agrees with. We have a large amount of people that comes into a particular area downtown to start with. Carolyn Creighton Park each year sees hundreds of thousands of visitors from Cherry Blossom Festival. We have multiple festivals and activities downtown for the lights at Christmas, 790,000. And of course along the river as the trail there. So these types of cameras are very unique and specific for those types of areas. I will be surprised that you see some more in the upcoming future for those types of large areas. It allows us to keep things safe. You don't have to watch these cameras 24/7, just like you don't watch a Ring camera at home. If there's an incident that happened at your house, something triggers it, then you know to go back and look at it and see what happens. But we will have people monitoring these situations. More importantly, you can address certain issues that come up. If a sheriff needs to get to an area and they need to know what's happening before they get there, they can look at the cameras. If we have an incident, certainly they can go back and look at the cameras if there's an incident that happens. Or if we have someone that's known to frequent the area downtown that may have an arrest warrant on them, you can upload a picture of them and it'll tell you exactly when they come to a certain spot in downtown Macon or any area that these cameras cover. So it's certainly both reactive and proactive, but it's something that's going to provide a safer atmosphere for everyone that goes to these venues. At the same time, it's going to work well with the new Fox system that we have coming all across Macon-Bibb County in the very near future.
And what is that?
That Fox system is one that's used in other areas, has been very successful in monitoring crime and helping curb some violence that we've seen in other areas. The sheriff is going to have these. We applied for a grant, been waiting to hear from these before we have to use our own funds. It'll do your tag reader type of information and be able to track vehicles. It has a camera system on it as well, but track vehicles all across Macon-Bibb County.
So does it work with kind of GPS in addition to camera monitors?
It will work with various different systems now. If you're driving on the interstate, you let the robbery, it'll pick up the car telling you where you're traveling at. If you did a shooting in a particular area of the community, it can track your every move across the county as these cameras go. But it's been used to solve a lot of crimes in, say, Warner Robins and other places. So we know it's going to be very successful here. It's just the funding right now. We're organizing that. We didn't just throw these cameras downtown just out of a happenstance. It's very targeted on what we're trying to do for all of the Macon-Bibb County community. But this is the type of system you typically use where there's large groups of people at. We have these types of cameras in other parts of the community. We don't tell everybody that because right now we use it to gather intel on certain crimes that are happening, mainly drug transaction, gang criminal activity. And it's certainly something we don't like to get out there to the public for security reasons for the sheriff.
Because I do remember just a year and a half or so ago, y'all were putting up cameras in just some strategic locations through the sheriff's office, and this is just going to supplement that downtown. One of the things you were saying in the debate was that, you know, we're not going into neighborhoods and this and that, but now there are hundreds of people who live downtown. That's their neighborhood. So how do you differentiate between kind of invasion of privacy and then keeping the peace?
Well, it's where you would have a reasonable expectation of privacy at. If you're moving downtown to a business district for your residents, there's no reasonable expectation of private on a public street. I think it's different when you get into homes. You don't want people to believe that you're spying on them, getting in and out of their car every day, maybe laying out at the pool, cutting the grass. That's not what these cameras are intended for. But at the same time, there's several neighborhoods that have reached out looking at the Fox systems that they want to know the automobiles that are coming in and out of their area. So we certainly can do that. I think it would have been very helpful for some shootings that we had this past week where there are people going into a particular part of our community and leaving and maybe shooting from an automobile or leaving in an automobile. That would have picked that camera up. It would have known who they were, probably be on the way to solving that crime right now. So it's very important for those types of things. But, you know, we want to, I said it several times because I want people to think this is not, you know, the government trying to monitor your every move. We're just trying to keep people safe, and if something happens, we want to be able to go back and visit that if someone is missing. We want to be able to go back and find out what happened to them. So we've had several elderly folks that have been missing in our community. This is another way that we can help find and locate them and put them back to their family that they need to be at. So you can use it for multiple issues, even for trash. You know, you have trash situations where people throw trash out. We want to see how it gets there, whether it's coming from certain trucks or people traveling through. At the same time, pedestrian safety is another one of those things that we have several instances where people were hit by automobiles, and maybe it's a hit and run, and we help solve those crimes, but also let us know what we could do better to improve public safety. So these cameras are going to serve multiple purposes.
Well, you're hitting on a couple of topics we're going to get to a little later on, but we have a question from our 13 WMAZ colleague, Nicole Bailey-Coven. There's been nearly a dozen homicides as we're approaching the end of the second month. And what do you think we need to do to work directly with teens and gangs, which she says is a big part of the recent violence that we've seen?
Well, I think there's multiple things that we can spend days talking about. We're actually ahead. We have less homicides at this point in time than we had last year. That's some positive remarks, but really these are incidents that happen between a small group of people. I continue to say that we're doing what we can with the MVP program. That's for violence prevention. That's for the future. It's not going to solve the problems we have right now, and I try to remind people that this is not a silver bullet. It's just going to stop everything from happening right now. The teens that are involved in these gangs, and a lot of this is retaliation. We've had just 1 or 2 instances that caused 6 or 7 homicides, and I think until we get a handle on that, most of these folks unfortunately are out on bond, are out on probation, out on parole, and at least for the time being, I think the most immediate impact that you can have in the situation is to make sure that that we're safeguarded from those types of folks, and they need to be in jail.
Have you had conversations with the district attorney about trying to keep some of these guys locked up longer?
Well, we always have conversations, you know, from a general perspective, but I try not to micromanage other officers. I mean, the sheriff is a constitutional officer. The DA, you know, she runs her office and she's elected by the people, and people have to hold her accountable like they do me. So I try not to micromanage people's jobs and responsibilities. I'm not there doing the work day to day. But I do know that at least 4 of the last 6 that we had this last week are people that were on probation or parole. And at some point in time, we have to protect society on a short-term basis, and those folks need to be incarcerated. Right now, I'm afraid that a lot of people in Bibb County don't fear punishment, and I think that's why we have the problems that we have. And that's not particularly what MVP is addressing. We're addressing the root causes and the long-term effects of crime.
I do notice in the releases we get from the sheriff's office that there's been mention of ShotSpotter a couple of times, like responding to a ShotSpotter call or whatever. Are you hearing that that is being an effective tool as well?
The ShotSpotter has been a very effective tool so far. It's getting us there quicker. We're knowing about incidents that happen when it doesn't get called in by 911. Again, it's not a shot protector that protects people from getting shot. It gives us more intel. You're going to see over a period of the next couple of years, when these things start to go through the court process, how many cases have been solved by ShotSpotter. Right now, we typically can't get out and tell the public everything because it's a security issue for our sheriffs. We don't want people to know where everything's at and what's happening because we're trying to catch the bad guys.
All right. Well, the mayor mentioned pedestrian safety a little bit ago. When we come back, we'll talk about what is happening on that front. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus. This month we are talking again with Lester Miller, Mayor of Macon-Bibb County, for this Ask Mayor Miller. And remember, please always send your questions to mercerccj@gmail.com so we can get you on the program. Mayor, we're about the halfway mark for the Georgia General Assembly, a little past that, and just this last week, Senators Kennedy and Williams introduced a change to the act that created the Board of Elections back in the 60s that squarely gives the power to select and appoint an election supervisor with the mayor and the commission, the governing body of the county. You're supporting that. Why do you think that that's a better plan than the bipartisan representatives of the parties that are on the Board of Elections?
Well, I don't think it changes that. I think it just reaffirms what the current law is. It doesn't change anything except maybe the county managers play in the whole situation. Right now, we believe—
As the supervisor
yeah,
of the
right now we currently believe that the law already says that the governing body, which is the mayor and commissioners, makes the final decision of who's going to be an elected supervisor. If you look into some of the reasons that Senator Kennedy mentioned, there's some Supreme Court cases that's come up recently that talks about private entities making appointments and things like that. So I think it's well along those lines as well. It just makes it clear what we all believe is that the governing body makes that final decision. You can't hold Board of Election officers accountable if they're not elected. Right now, the way the system's set up, it's going to stay the same as far as appointing their members. You'll have 2 from the Republicans that are appointed by their folks, 2 by the Democrats, and then 1 that's appointed. That won't change at all. You're still going to have that board structure. What's going to change is just clearing up the language that the county manager may bring a recommendation to the governing body, and the mayor and the commissioners will select that. As a matter of fact, the mayor doesn't really have any say-so in that unless there's some tie vote or maybe the veto power, but the 9 commissioners will be deciding that after we vet the process, which is similar to what we had mentioned before. We want to make sure that there's an application process, that the person was vetted completely, since we're the HR department is from the county, and since we pay the person too, and we have the only authority to do that, to hire and fire folks. And I think that's just kind of mainly just restating what we already know to be the law.
Of course, the board has hired an attorney out of Atlanta, is currently suing you and the county commission. Do you think that this law change will make that go away? There's something on the docket for May for the judge to hear the case.
I'm not sure. I can't really speculate on what's going to make it go away. I think we're in solid shape. We filed a motion to dismiss. If you read that, it just basically tells you what the law is, and I've always been confident that we're doing the right thing. We're never going to advocate doing the wrong thing. Our primary goal is we just want the best qualified person that we can have to be the election superintendent, election supervisor there. We think this gives us the best opportunity to do so. We're always going to take recommendations and work together with our Board of Elections to make sure that we get the person that we think can lead them the better, that they're satisfied with. But the ultimate decision is going to come back to the governing body, which are held accountable by the people that elect them to those positions.
And the original language just said, upon the recommendation, the governing authority shall select and appoint. So that just takes that part out of there. Is there anything else that's up under the gold dome that you're paying attention to? Any legislation that you think is important for Macon-Bibb County?
There's a lot. I've been paying attention to the affordable housing bills that they have going through there. I think our Representative Washburn was a part of that, and I've been in constant contact with the Georgia Municipal Association. As we know, all communities are facing challenges now on affordable housing. We want to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And there's some things that affect the planning and zoning and the way we do planning and zoning in all the communities that we have to pay attention to. So I've been watching that on the affordable housing for sure. Several other tourism type things that we've been watching, but as far as Macon-Bibb County, a lot of things affect us, but the Board of Elections is probably the one that's most directly affects us this time. But then again, I don't think we're really changing anything. It's in the same position we would be in. The governing authority basically makes the final decision, and I think we'll continue to do that. And we look forward for that case coming forward if it has to, but I really think that the proper thing would be to dismiss the case.
And there's nothing stopping the Board of Elections from recommending someone to the governing body, right?
That is correct.
Because you take recommendations all the time for different boards.
We do. We always ask for input. But since we're held accountable, the final decision rests with us. But we certainly would appreciate and ask for and accept any collaboration that we can have between the two parties. Like I said, the main goal is to get the most qualified person that's unbiased as much as you can be in our environment. That'll do a good job for everybody.
Now, recently, you've also contracted with River Edge and with Habitat for Humanity for more affordable housing. How is that working, and can you give us an update too on the Macon-Bibb County Affordable Housing Board that you've recently created?
Sure, we've met several times. We've had some presentations done to this board from various entities on how we can increase our affordable housing. We're transferring the funds over from our ARP funds to them in a very short while. We expect in the next 60, 90 days to have some of that money going out to the public. It's going to increase the number of affordable housing that we have here in our county tremendously. That's going to be both new housing and rehabs. We're trying to infill a lot of these houses where we've been able to tear down almost 470 right now. At the same time, give people an opportunity to borrow low interest money to rehab homes that are blighted so we don't have to tear them down in the future. And it's going to provide a lot of opportunities for people to have housing.
We've also, you mentioned pedestrian safety earlier. We've had several fatalities already this year and recently held a pedestrian safety summit at City Hall. And you said you wanted to revise that 2015 ordinance that created the Pedestrian Safety Review Board, because it initially had them going over each case and all the different circumstances and trying to come up with solutions. And now that's being done by Peachtree Recovery Services, I think, at least gathering that data. So what is the plan going forward to use that data, and what changes do you want to make to that board?
Well, first of all, regarding the board, I believe that it may have been well-intentioned at the time it was set up. Now it's not really the mission of that board. You can't be judged on or asked to be graded on reviewing each of the deaths and determining what happened and all that stuff if you don't really have the buy-in from the coroner, the sheriff, and everybody there on the same page. You know, most of the average folk, that's outside their expertise. It's not their job to look at a hit and run and determine what happened or who's at fault or, you know, those types of things. So I think the mission has changed. They're more of an advocacy group. I think we can gather the data. We got some great data over the last couple of years on these hot spots. And I think what this board is more capable to do is to evaluate the hot spots, look at the funding that we provide them, and make recommendations to commission on maybe some low-hanging fruit that we can take care of now. Because of these summits that we've been having, I think the relationship has grown stronger between the Georgia Department of Transportation, and they're spending millions of dollars on Emory Highway, over near the Pinona area by Eisenhower Parkway, so they're starting to address these things. But we can still continue to do our part and advocate and use the funding for maybe better lighting, some sidewalks, some different types of things we can do on crosswalks to provide more painted and well-lit areas. And when we build new things and new places that we have, to make sure that we look at our policies that we have and make sure we're concerned about pedestrian safety at the same time. So I do see it working well. It's going to change the mission a little bit to more advocacy role as opposed to a review board. That's something that the sheriff needs to continue to do, and the coroner needs to do that because that's their expertise.
Now, also with that, at that summit, there was somebody on GDOT who was supposed to be there who wasn't there, and you had mentioned on this program, actually announced that you were going to do these summits with GDOT on a regular basis. Where are we with those? Are you still expecting to have those quarterly?
Oh, we certainly are. We have those at their office quarterly, and we talk about all projects, not just the ones that have pedestrian safety issues. We talk about Bass Road, Forest Hill, Jeffersonville Road, the Stardust Exchange, several new roundabouts that's coming. You know, there's going to be a couple on Bass Road as well as Anthony Road in Pinona. Some people love them, some people don't like them so much, but they've been shown to decrease the speeds and the flow of traffic and allow for a better result in the event you do have a crash. So we're certainly interested in those. We're going to continue to have those as long as it takes and as long as they're necessary, and I think they're going to be there for a long time. So we're excited to work with them.
Speaking as long as it takes, I mean, I've been doing this role with the Macon Newsroom Center for Collaborative Journalism for about 3 years now, and I remember them talking about those roundabouts there at Anthony Road and Columbus Road there by but it just takes years for all this to come to fruition, doesn't it?
It does. There's a lot of red tape, and especially with the state and with federal dollars and state dollars coming in, and you have to really dot every I, cross every T. And we always want to do that, but it takes a time to lay out a plan, to get approval. A lot of times you approve the plans, but the funding won't come from several years. And I think that's what a lot of people, they start hearing about the plans and something's going to be done, they think it's going to happen now, when really the money won't be there for several years.
Right.
Just like the Bass Road situation. It takes a while to do the studies, do the environmentals, and to assess the price it's going to take, and then you start doing the right-of-way purchasing, and then the funds come several years later, and in between some things change.
And what mayor doesn't hear about potholes all the time? Well, when we come back, we'll be talking about the county's plans to repair some of the worst roads in Macon-Bibb. So stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us for this Central Georgia Focus, the Ask Mayor Miller edition. Well, since we've been here again last month, a big announcement from you all about how you're going to tackle road repairs. I understand you're spending 5 times the money that's been spent in the past. So tell us how that's going to work to fix the worst roads in Macon-Bibb.
Well, I think most importantly, the commissioners are committed after hearing from the citizens of doing something in a more rapid way to fix the roads. Over the past years, you know, the county only funded about $700,000 of local money, and that's been SPLOST dollars to repair the roads or to resurface the roads, and we used the rest from a match with the state.
The local maintenance and improvement grant,
right? That we call the LMIG, and so we decided we needed to spend more money on that, and if it took spending money out of general fund, so be it. We were confident we could do that. So we're going to spend about 5 times as much money as we normally spend, and we're going to double what we call like a double LMIG, even though we're not getting money from the state. A couple of things it allows us to do is to speed up the process. We can speed up the process if we're doing the roads ourselves and don't have to get permission from the state to pave certain roads and how we do those roads. So it's going to enable us to really get about 16, 17 miles at least per year, as opposed to 9 before. And then over the next 3 years, we anticipate by 2025, last of the 2025 funding, that we'll have all the 4s and 5s, which are the worst roads that are rated, completed in Bibb County, which is a huge task. It's a very aggressive plan, but we think we can do that. And the reason we're doing that is we want to reevaluate those roads to look at the roads that used to be 1, 2, and 3 and see where they're at now by the time we get to the other SPLOST that may come up. And we anticipate that to be sometime in 2025 that we'll have another election to see if people want to continue to do that. And I suspect a large part of that money is going to go to do roads.
And our friend to the program, Ron Wildman, says that the asphalt's a mess on Walnut Street under the railroad overpass, and the area is littered with all kinds of debris. And he's gotten out there in the past. I've seen him with his weed eater. You know, he goes around. But can something be done, he asked, before Cherry Blossom Festival kicks off near Carolyn Creighton Park in a couple of weeks?
There's nothing that's going to be done at that site as far as the asphalt is concerned. That's a plan all by itself. Anytime you get around the railroad and underneath the railroad passing, crossings that you have there, is very time-consuming process. We've been working hand-in-hand with them. I suspect after you get through with the project you have there at Daybreak and the new wonderful housing we have there at the entrance of Carolyn Creighton Park, that you'll see some funds that are allocated there to improve that area. But it's going to take a little time. We're talking about 12 to 18 months. Now, keep picking up the trash and things like that. We'll continue to do that as needed. There's some water issues right there that we've been working with the Macon Water Authority that has to be done first. So all those things with infrastructure has to be taken care of first. And the last thing we're going to do is put a new road in while we've got trucks coming in and out of there for the project there at Daybreak. So good news on the rise is that we've got a plan and we look at some nice things happening there. The not so good news is going to be probably 12 to 18 months down the road before it happens.
Now, I've been concerned about the health of the cherry trees across Macon-Bibb. Some of them are 30, 40 years old and they're just dying, but it doesn't seem like there's any campaign to replace them. I mean, you just re-landscaped out in front of the city hall there, and I don't think there's a cherry tree there, or Rosa Parks, or down Poplar Street. So is there a plan to kind of maintain our cherry blossom capital of the world status?
There's always a plan. I think now you're seeing a large different varieties of cherry blossoms that are being planted, some that may bloom twice a year, some that require a little bit more TLC and different type of weather that may happen. So I think you'll see a lot more variety. Still the same beautiful cherry blossom that we're all accustomed to, just a different variety. And I think we're getting just as many out into the public that we're losing. So I wouldn't worry about any indication that we're going to not be the cherry blossom capital of the world. Still going to have thousands and thousands of trees here, and they're going to be beautiful as ever. So that's something I wouldn't put too much worry about.
Anything you're looking forward to, especially for this year's festival?
Oh, there's just too much. I think once again, Stacey Moore and her group has outdone themselves, and we've got a lot of great events happening. We have the mayor of Karobi coming over, one of our sister cities,
perfect.
and I'm excited to meet with that organization and that group and show them all the wonderful things.
Sounds good. See you next month.